Everybody else should just jump in a minute. Can you hear me, Rodney?
Yeah, I hear you. Hear me?
I hear you. Dave, can you hear me?
Yep, I hear everybody.
Yeah, that was horrible. All right.
Give me
And
one second.
yep. There he is. He's back. All right, we're back on. Back like we never left. Conversation continues. We're going to go ahead and get some more points from this African Union speech. And then I have one more topic I think that everybody might want to talk about, but maybe they don't. And when we're talking about this topic, they might want to hide their faces because we're going to talk about the caravan of people from Guatemala that are marching up through Honduras and Mexico to the 3,000 migrants that are marching up to the southern border of the United States. So I hope that's not too controversial for everybody. But before we do that, we're going to wrap up the conversation that we were having previously that was stopped abruptly due to technical issues, right? Maybe YouTube saw that we were getting too deep on them and they decided to shut us down. But I had a question. It was really specifically for David to get the conversation back on track because she also mentioned something about doctors. She said, even if you took every doctor from across the world, every doctor, and you put them in Africa right now, it wouldn't be enough. Well, maybe she said it was just African doctors or all the doctors in America, but she was talking specifically about that patient to doctor ratio that Africa is lacking on. And she mentioned that Tanzania was actually offering up some land near Victoria Falls to some groups to come in and build some Wakanda villages, is what she called them. Wakanda villages. Doctors in Africa, there's not nearly enough doctors. Even if you took all the doctors in America and put them there, we're not going to run out of positions for doctors anytime soon. But we just need people who are trained. We need people like Dave to actually go back to maybe perhaps train or teach in African university. Dave isn't there right now, but he's doing something that. But I don't know.
Yeah, hold on, baby.
Dave, did you get that?
Yeah, I'm back on.
She was talking about the doctor to patient ratio in Africa. Even if you took all the doctors out of America, it wouldn't be enough. And then she talked about the Wakanda village that they were offering up to some American groups to come in and do some training and teaching, medical training and teaching. Thought on that.
I'm sorry, cuz. Give me 1 second, real quick.
Okay.
Baby girl squared away.
Okay, she was swearing. What? Oh, you gotta do something about that, man.
No, I said squared away.
Okay, you broke up a little bit. Rodney is eating a churro. His phone is not on mute. We hear him chewing very hard.
It's not a churro. It's fruit stripe bubble gum, man. I ain't had fruit stripe gum in years.
Okay, all right, we're live. We're live. Okay.
It's our first product spot. Fruit stripe gum. Y'all gotta try some of this stuff. It's got a zebra on it.
All right. The idea of Wakanda villages. The idea of a Wakanda village near Victoria Falls, specifically built for medical purposes. So we talked about medical tourism. She talked about the brain drain in Africa. She talked about the lack of doctors in Africa. Dave, you got to have, I know you have something to say about that.
No, I think she's 100% right. And Africans need more physicians there. You know, there's a lot of medical conditions, and you have AIDS or HIV, which is prevalent in Africa. You have different infectious diseases just based off the standard of living in some of the more impecunious neighborhoods. And like you pointed to, a lot of times some of the greatest minds or the great minds in Africa actually migrate out of Africa. They end up going to the United States or to London or somewhere in Europe, and you're losing that brain power. Now, some of them do get educated, get their degree, they become a physician, and they go back to Africa or to their home country and they pour into their country. But for the most part, most of them stay wherever they migrate or move to, immigrate to. So there's definitely a high demand for physicians in Africa. Now, the idea of millions of physicians, Black physicians in the United States relocating to Africa to help them out is very grandiose, and I don't foresee that happening.
How about you?
I would spend some time in Africa and help out. Absolutely, kind of like a humanitarian type effort, or even I know you brought up the idea of, or something that you wanted to do was spend some time in Africa throughout the year, and whatever business or company you have going on, obviously manage that, and then for the rest of the year move back to the United States or to Europe. I would actually be on board with spending a decent amount of time in Africa throughout the course of a year, just providing medical aid and assistance to a particular country in Africa that's of like great need for more physicians and providers. I know that a lot of the countries need more physicians, but yeah, I would definitely be on board with something like that. And even if all the Black physicians in the United States don't relocate to Africa to provide that assistance, just having thousands of docs go to Africa for a certain period of time and provide aid, I think that would be beneficial. And that would also show the motherland and the African Union that the African diaspora is here to really build that relationship that we're trying to establish.
Yeah.
It would show our commitment to helping out the continent.
And you're sure enough right, man. Just get back. I think the biggest part that I'm missing right now, and a lot of other people are missing, is maybe that seed money. The seed money, one, get over there and actually do the research, because each country is different. I think right before we broke up with the last talk, you had mentioned capitalism and the way capitalism works. And the scary part about some countries in Africa, not all, is that they don't all really operate off capitalism, right? So some of them are more leaning toward Venezuela, meaning that you can set up a really nice business and build it, and it's all yours until it does too well and they find a reason to take it from you. That happens in a lot of the countries, right? A lot of the countries have state-owned utilities, state-owned whatever, and the state manages this. It's not private business persons, and that's okay. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I think there's different levels or different mixtures of capitalism and socialism that you're going to need in some African states, because they're young states. They're just 50 years old or whatnot. They're not as far as along with some of the first world countries or the U.S., whatever, so obviously. But I think knowing where you're going to do business, because we just had the land redistribution that went through in South Africa, and now Namibia is talking about doing the same thing. I'm like a thing, whatever. But and that's not a bad thing. But you do have to think from this vantage point. It's not a bad thing from our vantage point right now. So we have Black people need that land, or in many cases it wasn't just Black people. It was. But I digress. If that was you who had built that farm, if that was you who had built that business or whatever else, and they're saying, well, your skin isn't dark enough, or you're not actually from Africa and you're taking advantage of us, whatever else, and now we want it. In some countries that could happen, right? So I think it's about knowing the business climate in each individual country. Like there's 54 different states at this time. Hopefully we can fix that over the next decade or 2 decades, and some of these states actually start to congeal, come together. But as of right now, you have to know how to do business in 54 different states. The AU is there to ease that process, but we have to be smart and do our homework before we go in. Once we get in, now we have to talk to Africans, because they're going to let you know where the gaps are, the people on the ground. you can go over there and think that the environment is going to be like an American environment, but it's not. It's going to be completely different. You're going to be dealing with different attitudes, different cultures, different business, different ways to do business and everything else. So, what we want to do is actually get over there, and we'll start in one country, maybe test that country out for a year, go to another country, not for a year, but for a week or 2 weeks that year. The next year when we go back, we can try a different country. And the next year when you go back, you try a different country. But at some point you have to buy. You have to buy in, you have to buy the land. So that's kind of my plan. My plan is just let's get over here this year and let's try a country. Let's say okay, it's going to be Kenya this year. Next year it'll be Ethiopia, and the following year we're going back to Ghana. And after that, we try Ivory Coast or Senegal.
Okay.
But in the course of a year, 2 years, you have a better idea of how these states are different, how East Africa and West Africa are different, and which one is more favorable to you.
Okay. And again, this is kind of goes back to the talk we had last time too. I hear you talking about, going in and testing it out. Are you willing to go 100% all your wealth, all your livelihood into a thing in Africa right now, even in one place you want to try? Because I think still the best bet is to start a business where you're at, where you know everything, and then expand into a market that you're unsure of, or test markets out that you're unsure of.
I say you got to go where your heart is, man. You got to go with where your passion is. And I do believe in doing business smart, but I also think you need to strike when the iron's hot. I don't have any real want to do business in the States. I've done, I had my trucking business. That was enough for me. I think for me, the idea that $5,000 in the States doesn't do as much as it does in Africa. And I just think it's more expedient to go back to the anchor, to go back to the root. And I think it's just easier, right? I don't think it's enough people doing it. There's plenty of people doing business here now. It's only a few very brave people who are actually going to Africa. Now, I don't think, when I said they're brave, I don't think they're taking any extra risk or any risk more than what we would be taking here. There's probably more upside on the other side because you're dealing with a smaller currency, where the American dollar goes further, and you're dealing with places that have gaps. There are gaps there. Like if you open up a restaurant in Africa, and it's a pancake restaurant, I'm just gonna keep it simple. How many pancake restaurants are there in Africa? Now I could be off base because maybe they don't eat pancakes. If you open up a pancake restaurant in Chicago, how many pancake restaurants are there in Chicago? That's the place where I don't think people aren't looking at the opportunity. And Rodney, some people never go back. So like for you, it might be more advantageous for you to stay here and do business here. And other people might have an interest in going back. And I'm not saying everybody needs to move. I think it's only a small percentage of people that will move. Maybe it's 5%. Dave said it could be a whole lot less than that.
Yeah. But I mean, like you said, you go over there, you start a pancake business, and your $5,000, which of course you're talking about retirement money. So you're talking about using your retirement money to constantly have almost like a business feeding your income over there in Africa to help build your business over there. That's what you're talking about, right?
Well, I have 7 years before retirement. So my plan as an individual is let's buy the land now. So take $5,000 or $10,000 to get land. Boom, that's
okay.
Now. Over the next 5 to 6 years, start doing other things to invest in building relationships over on the continent. So people is probably the most important thing. Like having somebody who you trust to take care of your land and to connect you with the right people, show you how you do business there. And it could be other African Americans, because specifically when you're talking about Ghana, you already have the Association of African Americans in Ghana. You have other people over there who are doing business already. So let's not recreate the wheel. Like you set those relationships up and you start to do your homework, but you have land, like have a stake now.
I get it. I get what you're saying, but I'm just trying to figure out, like, because people are going to listen, they're going to say, okay, well, yeah, I want to go over there, I want to start a business in Africa. I'm going to sell pancakes, right? And they're going to sell pancakes.
No.
They're American pancakes are going to sell well over there, but they're only going to get African money over there, so it's not going to be worth as much as the American money they would have got back in the States. So I mean, and there's some.
Why do you say that? Why do you say that? Because the reason I say that is the reason I say that.
Buy a hamburger from say McDonald's. A McDonald's hamburger can cost $2, right?
Right.
If you go over to Africa, you're not going to get $2 for a McDonald's hamburger, because that would be what? There's $30 for them. 30 of whatever that what's called is. You're going to get maybe 4, maybe 5, because it's got to be something that they can really afford with the local.
Right. It's all about the supply chain, right? So how much does a chicken cost over there? How much does a cow cost over there? It doesn't cost as much as it costs in the States. So you're getting all this stuff local. The
right.
wheat, everything you're going to use is just as cheap, or just as not cheap, but inexpensive as what you would sell the hamburger for. So you're talking about that economy is going to make you on a ratio, scale to scale, it's going to make you the same amount of money for there. Now, if you're saying, well, you can't take that money then and go be able to build something in America, I disagree. I disagree on 2 levels. But first level is you're thinking that I need to build something in America. Why do I need to build something in America if you've already built something in America and you're my brother? You see what I'm saying? And the other thing is,
I love you, bro.
It's all about economies of scale. So if I sell 1 million burgers over in Africa, guess what? I'm still going to make $1 million. It's like if you have to sell more and then go over there to America, you're making the same amount. You have Dangote. You ever heard of Dangote Group? Dangote is the richest man in Africa. He's from Nigeria. He's a multi-billionaire, and he has cement companies in Africa. Like all his supply chain is in Africa. So I mean, go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, how about this idea? Like, yes, we have some Black Americans who migrate over to Africa, who starts investing in the opportunities that exist there, try to establish the relationship with the motherland for the African diaspora. And obviously, I'm referring to other Blacks as well, a part of the African diaspora. So you have a percentage of Blacks who do that. But specifically for here in for Black Americans, what if we also worked a little harder here in the States, right? If we started pouring more of our money into the black banks that exist currently in our country. You have the One United Bank, the Liberty Bank and Trust Company, Citizens, and these banks have assets that range from 300 million and more. So what if we started taking advantage of those banks, getting loans from those banks, right? Investing more in those banks, building up our Black communities, creating more businesses within the predominant Black communities here in America, improve from an economic standpoint, and then start to establish a stronger relationship with the motherland. Now, as I stated, obviously we should encourage for people, if they want to go over to the motherland and start the work. But I think it would be excellent, at least for us as Black Americans, if we improved our current economic status here in America and then reached out to the motherland. We would have much more to offer and much more to give. But I feel you, Twine, like this is an ample opportunity because
I mean, it's more complex than that too. Because just look at it like this, Dave. I think if we start thinking of ourselves as a block, then yes, we have to do one or the other, right? But we're not a block. And the thing is, we're in a free country, in a free world, we believe in free movement of people for the most part, right? Still respecting sovereignty. But the idea that you can't do that over here while I'm doing that over there, it doesn't resonate with me. I think that we can do both at the same time. Like, and it happens natural. It's nothing we even have to plan for. Like, I'm going there.
The only thing I'm really worried about, like, honestly,
Rodney would like to stay here. So that's going to happen naturally. It's like it's natural selection, natural movement, just the natural way business is actually done. I don't think like we even have to say, man, it would be a great plan. Now, I feel you on the banks. Yes, let's use Black banks now. Why not? As long as they can have the same services as USA, I'll use I use a black bank. Go ahead, Rodney. So I didn't want to.
I was just saying that the black banks thing is easier than having all blacks be Democrats. I mean, if all blacks support black banks, I think we get much more benefit from that. And then the only real worry I have with just business in Africa, because I think it's a great idea. The only worry I have is, like you said, you could buy that land today, you can start your connections, and then something happens, and maybe the state wants that land, they take it from you, or they want your business, and then you lost it. It's kind of like investing in foreign currencies. If that currency falls, then you lost everything. If that country, whatever that currency was, it goes away, you've lost everything. So it's kind of, I feel more secure in the U.S. just because the fact I know that, well, I feel pretty comfortable that the dollar is going to be here and America's going to be here for a while. Nobody's taking that away.
Right. But that's when it comes. You have to do your homework of where you want to go, right? Like, do you want to go to Ghana, which is stable and been stable for like 50 years? Or do you want to go to the Congo, right, which has its issues? Right. So it's like you have to be smart about where we're trying to go and understand. I think, man, like you have to be interested in this so then you can actually do the research, right? Like we have to get interested. We have to get excited about it. But I think for the most part, the same way, you say people, have this negative connotation toward blackness, or people have this negative connotation toward black business in America. There's this overriding negative connotation about Africa, or this overriding negative connotation about moving to Africa, or doing business in Africa, or kente cloth. Like I was watching NBA, and who was the brother who was walking around in the locker room, and Charles Barkley and Shaquille O'Neal started to clown him. They're doing the announcing up in TNT or whatever else, and they started to clown this man for having like a kente cloth outfit on. Like, oh, look, he looks like Bozo the Clown, whatever else. That's the way they really felt about it. And I'm like, well, they never saw kente before. Like, if you go to Africa or whatever else, it's a lot of people wearing that shit. So in a way, you sideways clowning on them also. And the thing is, how come you think that doesn't look good? So it's like we have to change our idea about the way we think about Africa. One, you can find everything you can find in Atlanta, everything you can find in Dallas, everything you can find in Boston, everything you can find in Chicago. You have a doppelganger in Africa. There's big buildings there. Yes. There's, they have a light rail in Ethiopia now, and they'll get more. There's highways, there's buildings, there's fashion, there's malls, there's all of that. But then there's still this huge gap that African Americans have yet to fill the gap, or even to go back and say, okay, whether you like it or not, you are African. You can refer to yourself as African Americans. You could be whatever. You could say we escaped, or we suffered through slavery. We have our own history. You're still African. Get over it.
You're a citizen of the United States. I'm not a citizen of Africa.
But you're African. I'm talking about your ancestry. I'm talking about your ethnicity. You're not. I just went to London. I went to London, and I did all the history tours. And guess what? When the white people in America, they have a very special relationship with London, and it's much closer. It's much closer than black people in America and Africans. They go back there and they get their wife. They go back there and they do business. The UK is basically just another American state at this point, even though it birthed the US, but they don't care because it's all the same thing to them, because it's all them. So regardless of which one came first or what war they had in the past, they're over it. And I had to go there and tell them I'm American. And they had to tell me it was a terrorist attack today. And it just happened to be a black fellow. Okay, so it's like, why are you telling me that? Because I'm just as English as you is what I want to tell them. Shit, I'm 15% European. And guess what? That European, so I'm from the UK, so I can feel that they say, yeah, you're also, yeah. Congratulations, you're from the States. That's great. But I know in the back of their mind, they're saying, but you ain't one of us. So when you go to UK, you're not one of them. And you'll always be the minority here, man. You'll always be the minority because this is not your country. So I'm saying it's a different feeling. I'm not saying you're wrong for wanting to be here. I'm not saying you're wrong for wanting to live in America. I like America. I love America. I'm fighting for America. I'll die for America if I have to. But at the same time, it's a different feeling. And I just want everybody to expect. If I sound passionate, I'm not upset with anybody, man. I'm just really excited because I want people to feel it before you have an idea in your head what you think it'll be like. But I say, just try it. Just try it first. Just try it before.
If I can interject just real quick, yeah, I think you all are having more of a philosophical disagreement. Like, I think what Rodney is saying is that the risk may outweigh the benefit. And what you're saying is maybe the risk doesn't outweigh the benefit, but even if it does, it's worth the risk. At least that's what I'm getting from the discussion that you all are having.
Yeah.
Another thing is this. I think that we're Americans first, to be honest, because, I mean, not Americans first, but we're Americans. We're Americans, right? This is the country that we were born in. This is the only country that we know. This is just as much our country as it is the next ethnic group who, you know, just as much our country as it is whites or, you know, Hispanics who are citizens of this country. And that's just what it is. But I do recognize and appreciate our African ancestry. And I do think it's important that we explore Africa, that we take advantage of this opportunity. But at the end of the day, I just believe that it would be difficult for us to move as a monolith and for like all African Americans or Black Americans to get on board and want to venture out to Africa. But like you stated and I already previously stated, that's fine. I like the idea of some people going ahead and going over to Africa and investing in it, and then us who are still here in America improving our current situation.
Bro, I said 5%. You gotta be 5%. You say it could be 1%. Like, that's all good. Let's say it's 1/10 of 1%. What I'm saying is the persons that actually are willing to take that risk, make that move, they have something on their heart. So don't knock them and say, well, you know, how come you can't just build something here in the United States?
That's not a knock, man. That's just being like, look, don't go over there with nothing, and don't go over there risking everything unless you just want to. You can risk everything. You can risk everything here. Honestly, you can go to Las Vegas and risk everything. But I'm saying, look, go over there with something. Once you have something built up, go over there with some clout, some financial clout.
All right, Rodney, you already got clout. If you got 50 grand, you got clout. You got plenty of clout over there. That's enough. Exactly. You spend 50 grand. I'm not saying it takes 50 grand to do anything.
If I had 250 grand, I would definitely be willing to take 50 grand and go over there and build something big. If I had 15,000, I would definitely be willing to take maybe 5,000 and go over there and do something big. If I had 1,000, I would take a few hundred and go over there and do something big.
Okay,
I'm saying I wouldn't sink everything I got into a project over there and take that risk when I don't know the political situation. I don't know any of the lay of the land out there. I grew up in the U.S., so I kind of know this one a little better. I've been to school over here. I've talked to people over here. I know people here. You know what I'm saying?
You go where the opportunity is. You don't just stay where you're at and say, this is where I'm from. I'm saying, I'm not knocking. I'm saying you could do that too. All I'm saying is there is a noted gap.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I have the answers. I'm saying I would like to go. And if I have a pension and my pension is $5,000 or $6,000 a month, I think I'm okay to invest a couple of $1,000s into Africa, especially if I'm still working.
Yeah, right? You know what? I'm not saying if you're very sagacious, you do your research, you're clear on your strategy, you have a solid plan, I think it may be worth the risk, and you could reap some benefits from that. So, like you said, Ron, you did state that it's just important that prior to making any pecuniary moves or investments, just make sure you go over there. You visit Africa. You visit the different countries. You look at the potential opportunities that's available. you familiarize yourself with the culture, with the people, get down on the ground, grassroots level. And if you do that, then that'll better your chances of having success. At least that's what I'm getting from you.
That's it.
Yeah. We all agree on that.
Yeah. I'm not saying you should just don't bring your poverty and misery to Africa. If you don't have anything, don't just go there with nothing and think. I mean, I'm not telling people what to do, because maybe that's what you need to do. But I think you might have a harder time being poor in Africa than you'll have in the United States, right? We can pretty much say that you don't want to go there poor. 2, don't go there only thinking that you have all the answers and that you're going to fix everything, the great fixer, because that's the wrong attitude to take. 3, don't go there over optimistic, right? You're going to bump your head just like you will bump your head anywhere else. But 4, and this is opposite to everything else, don't sell Africa short, and don't sell that spiritual change that it brings. Don't sell that short either.
I agree 100% with all you just said too. But here's my point though too. Don't sell the U.S. short, because a lot of times if you got a pension, it's coming from the U.S. So you got to keep that citizenship going. And then don't forget, there's opportunity everywhere. It's not just in Africa. There's a noted, like you said, gap in Africa, but there's opportunity to do something and keep money coming in and to build business pretty much everywhere. And I want all Black people. Matter of fact, I want all people in general to understand that and know that, okay, look, if you're working, that's good. If you own a business, that's better. If you start owning multiple businesses and you're able to hire people, that's even better. So, I mean, we got to keep people motivated. And the fact of the matter is, everybody's not trying to own a business. Everybody's not trying to go to Africa. If Black, I think everybody's Black should at least travel to Africa at least once. Because that connection you're talking to is serious. That's real. I mean, everybody's going to get the level at which they belong. Cream rises to the top, but other stuff rises to whatever level it belongs at. So, I mean, if you don't necessarily, I'm not saying people who aren't business owners are less than. Some people, they go up through corporations. Some people go up through, having a good job. And some people just like being comfortable.
Yeah, those who can will, is what they say, I think. Those who can will. Or those who can good. Yeah, it's all good. Hey, Tarball, you've been quiet. But I know you listen, and you just hit us with the most, the heaviest stuff. So go ahead.
I believe that for me specifically, I feel like I am completely unapologetically African. I think that that's something that's really important to associate myself to. I do agree that it is of the utmost importance that we get a chance to visit as many countries within Africa as we possibly can. Because I believe that a lot of the notable figures that you see visiting Africa, like in the recent past, I think they're not just going out there for no reason. I think there's a lot that is to be done in that land, and I think that I know the topic rested a lot on doctors, but I think we need more of all different sorts of types of people there. I think we need teachers there. We need I think there's a lot of things that we can potentially do, and I know with Ghana, what they've been discussing as we go into next year is, they've dubbed it the year of return, and they've already opened their doors to us, and they're letting us know that they will make it easy for us to go there and acquire work. So I think that that's something that's really beneficial. and something that we should definitely be considering. 'Cause I think that would just ultimately be in our best interest, in my opinion. And I know we were talking about the risk versus the reward, but I feel like that reward is it's sort of like beauty. Beauty is said to be in the eyes of the beholder, and I think a reward is also something that's relative to you as an individual in terms of what do you feel would be that ceiling of a reward that you could accomplish if you were to move on that. And I think that the reward value for what's really I don't even see it as a big risk, because I feel like we know what we're dealing with here. Like, I'm not going to say that, this system that we live in is something that just completely shuts people out. And it does have a lot of different barriers and roadblocks and ceilings, but in terms of just completely shutting a person out, I don't think it has the power to do that. And I think that a lot of people are not aware of this, or they don't believe this to be their truth. So they allow certain emotions to set in, and they, at some point they don't even try, because, you feel like, well, what's the point? Because I have this system that's working against me, and, it's going to fail anyway. And I think that if we change our mindsets, I think that we can acquire a certain depth of power in that, because your belief system is everything. That's why it's, the person that says that they can and the person that says they can are both usually right. It's because of that belief system. So I think that we need to be able to formulate some sort of a shift.
Sorry, guys. Hold up a second. Yeah.
Go ahead.
All right.
We muted you, Rodney.
Sorry about that. I had a phone call and it knocked me off. My mother-in-law called me. She needed her credit card.
Okay. All
Well,
right.
no, I'm back in the car. Hold up. Let me get my stuff together here.
I'm gonna mute you for a second, okay?
All right.
Go ahead, Jeremy, if you are done.
No, that's pretty much it. I just think we need to have some sort of a shift that we can help to have more people realize, because I think there are a lot of people in 2018 that are starting to wake up to a lot of the ways that things work in the world, and I think that that's a great thing. That's an amazing thing. There's so many different platforms on YouTube where people are talking about it, and these people have thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, in some cases millions of followers. And I think that with every single one of these subscribers that are tuning in and watching these videos, I believe that these mental shifts that help to not just change, but honestly, that shift can help to just cultivate an entire new foundation of beliefs that can be instilled into people. Because I think that a lot of us, I would even argue the majority of us, have a sort of a defeatist mindset before we even try. Like, I can tell you how many different businesses I've tried. Like, I've done a lot of different, and I'm still doing things, and I've had a lot of things fail. But I think that fail is part of the journey, because I think a lot of people look at success like, whether it's you don't want to go to Africa until you have a certain degree of success, so then you could go over there. And I think the problem with that that way of thinking is success. I think we need to look at success as the journey, and less of an actual destination. Because if you say that you've arrived at success, then what is there left to do? Because you've already attained that success that you were after. But if success is considered as being the journey, then it's something you can potentially work towards achieving indefinitely, and you can instill that into your kids so they can follow along that course, and then they can teach their kids, and their kids can do it. And I think that what Africa is inviting us to go do is to come out there and help them to set the foundation of what can become generational wealth. Because I feel like while I say that I'm completely unapologetically African, I also do feel like I do have a sense of a claim to America, because this country was built from the blood and the sweat of my ancestors. You know, it's like if you ask somebody just at random, hey, where are you from? Oh, my great grandparents are from Ireland. Oh, my mom's from Korea. My dad's from Poland. You know, and you know, but if they say, where are you from? Oh, my family, we're from Mississippi. We're from, you know, Rhode Island. We're from Georgia. You know, so we're about the most American Americans that you could imagine being on this landmass. But I don't think we're at that point because of what has happened in the past. I think we need to go and rebuild and set focus on that primary anchor that the doctor was speaking about in that speech. I think that we need to focus on building that primary anchor, whether it's, you know, banks, utilities, hospitals, you know, whatever.
She made another comment too, Jeremy. She said that people work really hard to make Africa look bad while they're going there. So she was talking about the fact that they would, you know, you look at Africa and you see the poverty, you see the disease, you see everything wrong with Africa, and they're responsible for giving you that image of Africa. Yet they are the ones that are going there to invest in Africa. And that's what I saw. Like when I went to Africa, what I noticed was I was the only Black American on the plane. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, and that's
that there were Black people there that were from Africa that were on the plane. And then there were a whole lot of white people on the plane. And there were a whole lot of Asians on the plane. But there were no African Americans.
But let's not forget, though, a lot of those white people are still Africans.
No,
like, there are a lot of white people.
No, I get that. You have white people from South Africa, from Namibia, from Zimbabwe. I got that. Yeah, some of them were that. I'm talking about Americans. I'm talking about other Europeans. And I'm talking about, yeah, some of them are African, but so are you. We're all African.
I'm from Chicago. What did he just tell you?
I'm from Chicago too. So I'm trying to throw off my American identity. I'm not. You know, I think I've preached on that plenty of times that we are American, more American than anybody else. Why? Because what is America? America is the experiment. America is mixed people, right? America, the original Americans were mixed.
Hey, technically, we're
Americans. And when you talk about the average white person, you ask them where they're from, they're going to tell you, I'm from Ireland. That's because it came over on a boat sometime in the 1800s or 1900s. I can trace my roots back to America all the way to the 1700s, right? The paperwork, then we lose it after that. But irregardless of that, guess what? I'm still African, right? And that's the way I would like for other people to approach that. But I'm not trying to identify people. I'm identifying myself. Don't tell me how I'm supposed to identify myself.
Okay, so I'm of African descent, maybe I can say that, but I've never actually been to Africa. So I can say I don't even like the term African American. I'm American. Just happened to be that my ancestors were stolen from Africa, or maybe they sold from Africa. I don't know. That's the thing. I don't even know, because there's no real way I could track the history through all the slavery and stuff like that.
Have you tried to track the history?
So what if they came from Jamaica or other areas where there were Black people? Were all the Black people from Africa, or was it anywhere else on the earth where Black people were coming from?
No, we're talking about Black people all over the earth. I'm not saying everybody has to go back. Like Jamaica is Jamaica, but some Jamaicans are Africa.
My question is more so like, did all the Black people, all the Negro people come from Africa? Or is it possible that Negro people came from other parts of the world as well?
I think a lot of people. Yes, you have some people from the South Pacific who are also Black. You have people who are from India, from Sri Lanka, who are Blacker than anybody on this podcast right now. I got it.
Yeah. Since we came from slavery and we came through the slavery thing, how do we know that there's no real Indian Blacks? And so I might be Indian.
There are.
You know what's interesting though? This is what's funny. Technically, we're all just humans, and all these different ethnic groups, even down to countries and continents, they're a part of our imagination. Us as humans, we created it. So I know I'm kind of being a little I'm getting a little deep on this, but it's just interesting to hear us kind of,
But how do you feel about Africa then? I want to know everybody's personal feelings about Africa. We can say, yeah, we're all human beings. Got it. We're all human beings. But how do people see Africa? How do people feel about Africa?
How do I feel about Africa?
You think it's hot? Right? You're wrong, because it's not all hot. You can go to there's plenty of places in.
I've never been there, so it's for me to claim and say, "Hey, I'm an African." I don't know about Africa. I've never been there, so it's hard for me to feel right.
And that's your fault. If you're 40 plus years old and you ain't been to Africa, I know you got the money. That's your fault. That's your fault. Get a plane ticket.
For the sake of the conversation, because
I know you got the money.
For the sake of the conversation, because again, I think it's just interesting how we kind of go back and forth about these different systems and ideas.
Hey, right, it's all that we created. That came off the wrong way. I didn't mean it like that.
No, I'm with you, man. Trust me, I'm over here laughing. I hear you. I'm with you.
That we've created as humans, but for the sake of the conversation, do I consider myself African? No, I don't consider.
How do you feel? How do I feel about Africa? That was the question.
How do I feel about Africa?
Yeah.
Oh, I know that's where my ancestors came from. So I do have this kind of deep-seated connection, I feel like, to the motherland, and I definitely want to go back and visit. And I think it's important that we recognize I almost feel like we have a responsibility to kind of feed back into the motherland, and it's important that we build that.
I know my viewers are wondering this too. They wonder, how come it's always a yellowest Negro? It's always a yellowest Negro that's the most pro-black. How come it's Kaepernick that decides to take the damn?
I was just telling my mother-in-law that.
Oh no, I definitely feel you, Twan. Like it really is important for us to.
Hey, y'all. Hey, I'm sorry to break. I just gotta break out real quick. Just want to let you guys know I love you all. It's all love, Antoine. I'm not mad at you. I thought it was pretty funny. I will go to Africa one day. I'm not saying I hate Africa. Sometimes I just go anti-Africa just to piss you off. But I love everybody on the call.
All right, love you, man.
Love you too.
We lost Dave for a second too. So now it's just me and you, Jeremy. I know Dave will come back in. Hey, listen. So if you're wondering why that is, I don't know. I don't know 100%. I have my ideas. I think a lot of it has to do with just, maybe we're not as beaten down by our blackness because we're not as black. I think maybe if you had to wear the skin and, you were poked fun at, or you feel like it was attractive for you, then you don't want anything to do with it, right? You want to get away from it. And we see it more as an opportunity, maybe because opposites just attract. So maybe that black skin or that black continent sounds like a really good idea to us. But then you have and this is, maybe I'm speaking in broad terms, right? At the end of the day, maybe you just have good people with good hearts that want certain things. So I'm not saying Kaepernick did that because he's half white. I'm not saying that all light-skinned people are half white, because I'm
not super light-skinned, so
no, but
I feel similar, definitely. But yeah. I feel like there's no reason why we shouldn't go. And the only thing that I could think of is like the same thing that kept me in the state that I was in for so long, where I had, honestly, I had like very little desire to go. I hadn't really, it wasn't that I was ever really against it, because I've never been against it, but just never really thought about it. It's just not something that I would consider. And I think a lot of that was just because of how the school systems, for example, are, set up here. Like, you just think that, you go to Africa and it's just a bunch of animals running around and it's like no organization, and, just like it's just really unfortunate that this is the message that's so commonly received of Africa inside of this country. And a lot of people, will will fall for it, you know, because it's such a convincing argument when you see literally like every history book that's part of your curriculum in school, you know, is just showing something that, you know, most people wouldn't want to identify with. I mean, that's just really what it is. But I think that if you go out and do your own research, which, you know, unfortunately for me came later on in life, you know, when I started to look at things outside of what was being presented to me from, you know, some sort of a curriculum, I think that's when my interest started to get piqued because, again, it was just something I had never even considered.
Yeah, I think, and two, Dave, you still there?
Yeah, I'm on. Actually, I'm about to get off, man. My phone is dying, and the wife, she just made it in from work. So
Okay, all right. Handle business, bro. Hey, thank you for coming on, Dave.
all right, no problem.
All right, me and Jeremy, we'll finish it up.
All right, y'all.
Not
All
bad.
right.
Later.
No, what you're saying, man. I mean, that really resonates well with me. At some point, I just started to do my own research, and the thing was, early on, it's not that I ever really had a negative view about Africa, but then I do very clearly remember from early childhood, even the cartoons that we would see, the Tom and Jerry's, and they would still have those racist cartoons on in the early 80s and in the late 80s. You know, you can't find those now. Now you have to go on to YouTube and yeah, if you're out there, hey, just search racist cartoons, you know, and you'll see of the way that they depicted Black people in America and in Africa. And then I remember watching a lot of older movies from like the 1940s and 50s, and whenever they would depict even people from the Caribbean, they would make them it'd be the jungle. You know, it always had to be the jungle, and it'd be the jungle states or whatever else of Jamaica and Haiti. And of course, that's Africa that they're talking about, right? We're talking about Africans. You should have this common idea of what it is or what to expect. And then the poverty, right? So then, you know, comes Live Aid in 1985 to the point where, and they never give you the follow up and say, well, this is what's happening now, right? At that time, it was just, you would just see people starving. And your idea of the Horn of Africa are starving people. And then it becomes a gimmick or a joke or whatever else, where people aren't, because especially at that time, we didn't have any connection. It seemed like at that time, it was fewer people from Africa in America, of course, right? And you had less real examples of who they were and what was going on there, because we don't own the media. And at some point, you just start to do your own research. And once you start to do your own research, it's addictive because, you know, at the end of the day, it's very, very familiar to you. Maybe through a spiritual connection and maybe through, you know, just something genetic, but it's the history is very familiar to you. And only thing I can think, it's a pity that, you know, Africans weren't writing a lot of this stuff down. Some Africans were writing the history down, but I wish we had more pre-colonial history that we didn't have to really worry about the oral portion, because it's so rich to this day. There's so much richness in Africa, and the loss, I think, is that we don't have that written history that goes back just a little bit further. Like you would have in college, you would have the Asian studies, and then we have African studies, and both of them were really good classes or whatever else. I wouldn't major in any of that stuff because I don't know how much it's worth to major in. But the difference between those two classes was, you know, the Chinese history, 4,000 years long, right? Or maybe a little bit longer than that. And they've been writing for quite a while. But I'm not discounting oral history either. I might be rambling a little bit. The bottom line is that Africa and Americans and South Americans, people in diaspora, we have to value the root. We have to value where we come from. And to this day, I say the majority of people don't. They still don't. They don't understand. They'll laugh at you. You wear like African kente cloth, or if you celebrate Kwanzaa, you're gonna get some flack for that. And we'd like to get past that point. We'd like to get back to a point where, hey, we're able to communicate with our brothers and sisters and build lines of communication, transportation, back and forth between the continent, the Americas, and all over the world, all over to diaspora. Speaking in broad generalities right now, I'll let Jeremy have the last word.
Well, I completely agree. As far as like with the all the messages that we would see with a lot of the earlier cartoons, but I think the biggest challenge is when people start to realize that those stereotypes have never really gone away. Like they're still in today's cartoons, and they're in pretty much every movie you go see. I think that was one of the other things that sort of put me a little bit on edge with that with the speech that was given in that video that we referenced earlier. There was a few different mentions of Wakanda, so that kind of put me a little bit at a bit of unease, because that movie was, it had its own narrative, its portrayal of Black Americans in that movie. Like you really see the two sets of Black Americans. You see the lost children at the beginning of the movie that are just on the basketball court. You see the other Black American representation that you have in the movie is at the end of the movie, where you have another group of lost children just playing on a basketball court. And it was crazy because like when the spaceship landed, it was like not one parent came out to assess the situation. So it was really.
That's a deep analysis, but go ahead.
So I get a little bit on edge when people bring up Wakanda too much, So like I'm hopeful for this African diaspora, credit union or bank or whatever that route may be. But that's like when I was talking earlier about what is the criteria that we're looking for, because while Wakanda appeared to be something that was like beneficial to us, it was also very poisonous at the same time, and not just for that African American representation of the children on the basketball court, but it was for so many other things, and it was the I don't want to really get into it, like, because we've talked about it previously, but it was just so many different things in that movie that was so detrimental for us as a people, and so many of us never even noticed it.
Hey, let me ask you this, because I don't know if you remember this in a speech, but she did mention that she had brought it to some of the cabinet members of Donald Trump, her plan for the bank and for the repatriation, or the ease of repatriation to the continent. And Trump was actually for it. I didn't want to bring it up while David was on the line. He might have, Lane may have busted his head. But the idea again, Trump is quote unquote a racist. Yet he's for programs. He said, wow, this is great. And then she was like, could you please turn the camera off? But she didn't want to discuss it to the world, but she kind of let it out there because they got that part, on tape. But Trump is for those type of programs that would build relationships between Africa and African Americans. Now, if he's quote unquote racist, I don't know, thoughts?
Well, I think one statement that she said when she was talking about him, and she was talking about, that whole situation. She brought up something about like where he made a comment about like his friends go to Africa and then they come back rich, you know, and I
Yeah.
thought that was a very telling statement because it's like so many people are realizing all of the different opportunities in Africa except for us, you know, and it's really unfortunate. So it's like I feel like we need to do something, otherwise this window of opportunity, I think I think it can close pretty quickly. Is I guess what I'm trying to say. So I think that we need to, you know, first we need to become aware that there's this entire world out there that's, you know, that wants us, you know, and I think we need to realize that first, and then what we choose to do with that is you know, that's on us, you know, whether we want to go, we want to go pursue it, see what we can build, or if we want to, you know, stay here and, you know, continue on with what we've been going through here. So I mean,
That's the
you know, it's
thing.
really
Jim.
that's
I always said if people are going to complain, if they're going to complain and they're going to protest, well, protest doesn't build anything. They're trying to change somebody else. The most expedient way to change is to either change yourself or change your location. Try somewhere else. And maybe if it doesn't work in the next place either, then maybe you can say, well, it's not the place I'm in. And maybe it was just me. Right. But why spend years trying to change somebody else? We can build it yourself somewhere else or build with people who are more in line with what you're trying to do. Right. Um, so let's bring it to a logical conclusion. The logical conclusion, I believe, is that it's a free world and people are going to do what they want to do. So I'm not telling people they need to move to Africa. I'm saying it sounds like a good idea to me. I'm not saying you need to move to Africa. I'm saying you need to be smart. You need to do your research. You need to find where the gaps are. You need to make the right connections, the right relationships. You need to be prudent, but you also need to be very smart with your money, right? And then you do business the same way you would do business anywhere else, right? And you go out there and you start kicking ass, man, and you make some money and you employ people, pay your taxes, and be happy.
what if we don't need to be smart with our money? Like if you think about it for a minute, because that kind of made me think on something for a minute. Right now, we're pretty much like the largest consumers in this country, right?
Mm.
What if we did the same exact thing over there? You
Oh
know,
yeah,
and we've got entrepreneurs because right now we're collectively not all that smart with our money. You know, every time you see somebody with like a $200 pair of shoes on, you know, like gym shoes, you know, I think there's other things that could have been done with that. I'm not knocking anybody for their personal choices, but I'm saying like, what if we could carry that over to there and be consumers in a nation full of people that, you know, are like us, you know, and they're building businesses and establishments and all sorts of different
well,
entertainment. We're largely entertainment-based consumers.
where's the supply chain? Like Kanye was just in Uganda and he was handing out sneakers, and I
I
thought,
didn't like that. I
I,
mean, I liked it. I liked the sentiment, but I didn't like that the statement that could have been an underlying statement
I
with that.
loved it because I'm sure there's something behind it, and what is behind it is the fact that let's talk about supply chain. All right, where is he going to get the materials for the shoe? He's talking about actually building shoes or selling shoes or having some type of distribution in West Chicago. So in Chicago, but I feel like that shoe needs to be made, or we need to get the resources for the rubber, whatever else, direct from Africa. That's a relationship. I think you're talking about the idea that the shoes were white.
I just saw a correlation there, but that may be a whole different topic for
Go
a
ahead.
different day.
Go ahead.
But there was a correlation there that I would have to figure out how to word this one correctly. So I'm gonna need some time to think on that one. But there was a correlation there that I didn't like seeing personally. But
okay, but we'll talk about that then. I want to hear that also. But the idea of a black multimillionaire or billionaire actually in Uganda and with the people and wanting to make a change, whether it be, he was talking about a Jurassic Park or some type of theme park, or it be a factory to build shoes or whatever else. That's a connection, right? And Uganda is moving right now. Uganda is it's one of the better economies in Africa. I think they may have a large debt. Also, there was I saw something earlier today, and they were talking about exporting avocados. I think it was Uganda. It was either Kenya or Uganda, who struck a deal with China, a trade deal with China to like start exporting avocados and a few other type of fruits. And that's another reason. Like I like China and Africa. I think it's good to have that relationship with China because then it also opens up the Chinese markets. So yeah, they'll come in and they're going to get some natural resources of which that are finite, but yet still untapped amounts. But then there's also this huge 1.3 billion person market in China. And we have things in Africa that they don't have in China, right? So that we're going to have certain exotic fruits in Africa that they just can't grow in China. So if we can sell them that market is opened up to us. I'm saying us because, like I said, if it's opened up to Africa, that is very profitable. So yeah, they'll come in, they'll build, and there's going to be some give and some take. We have to be smart with how we deal with China, but that Chinese market and having access to it is a good thing.
I think that it can be a good thing. I really do. I believe that it has the potential to be a really good thing. But I think before it can become a good thing, a few other things need to change. Like I feel like that predatory lending situation that China has installed in Africa, I think that needs to go away. I think what they're doing with these little microchips and hacking all these different electronics and doing these massive data breaches at 2 o'clock in the morning. I think that needs to change. So I think there are a number of things that need to change before I would consider that like a good relationship. But as it is right now, I would probably say definitely not. But it could be, but I think that, they would have to play fairly on that in order for that to become that. So.
Okay. All right. Hey, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna wrap up right now. So we've had people pop in and out of the video, and one, I want to thank everybody who came on today and participated in the talk. I think it was value added to myself and to all of our viewers. To the viewer, a thank you for coming in and just listening to the talk. Also, please hit the like button. Please subscribe. We'll be back on next week with another episode of The Logical Conclusion, where we'll have a discussion, maybe about just about anything happening in the news. But I really want to just say I'm thankful for each and every viewer that comes on and just clicks the like and hits subscribe if you like what you heard tonight. All right. Hopefully everybody has a good night, and we're signing off now.